If you try to draft a guy too late, you could end up missing out on him. If you end up jumping for a guy and drafting him way too early, you could miss out on a better player that could be a stalwart for your fantasy team. I have read your comments in my videos over the last several weeks, and I hear you. There is a lot of confusion on the ADP that is being posted by all of the platforms that we play in compared to the ADP that we're seeing when we're actually participating in drafts or doing mock drafts. I have 10 rounds worth of average draft position that we're gonna look through today. And for every single round, we're gonna talk about the players that we feel will actually end up being drafted a lot higher than what their current ADP says. Let's go ahead and hop right into the first round. And at the very top of the first, guys like Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, and Tyreek Hill are going to be at the top of your drafts every single time. It's no shock to anyone that these guys are being taken quite a bit. And then Breece Hall is the second running back off the board. Obviously, no shock to anybody as well. My first question is going to be with Bijan Robinson, who currently has an ADP of 6 overall. I absolutely believe that he's going to end up going higher than Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase by the time we get into redraft season. And I think you're going to see some leagues where Bijan Robinson is even drafted over Breece Hall. Now, Breece Hall is my RB2, Bijan Robinson is my RB3. So I'm not saying, yeah, go draft Bijan over Breece Hall. But if it's me, given what we've heard out of the Atlanta Falcons' new coaching staff, I want as much Bijan Robinson as possible if CMC and Breece Hall are already off the board. Now, the one thing that you may notice right now is that there's more than 12 players listed inside the first round. So the way I have all 10 rounds broken down is I take everybody whose ADP would fall inside that round. So if there's a lot of guys that are right on the edge, like at the end of the first round where we see an ADP of 12 for Gibbs and Barkley and 12.7 for Garrett Wilson, there may end up being more than 12 players inside that round, which could lead to other rounds having less than 12 players because the numbers just don't quite add up that way. And seeing how Garrett Wilson and Saquon Barkley are just at the edge of the first round, I do see their ADP improving a little bit here over the next several weeks, because Saquon Barkley over a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor, that could make sense to me. There's going to be some people out there that feel like the safety of Saquon Barkley with the Philadelphia Eagles is too much to pass up to risk it on a guy like JT or Jahmyr Gibbs. I could see him going over both of those guys. Similar to Garrett Wilson, currently at 12.7, I could see people wanting to invest in the potential ceiling that Garrett Wilson offers over a guy like Puka Nacua, over a guy like AJ Brown, but not close enough to going over Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do think Garrett Wilson could find himself going in the middle of the first round for a lot of drafts. Now, heading into the second round, there's really only one player that I'm looking at that I do believe is going to be drafted higher than his current ADP, and that's Derrick Henry with a current ADP of 20.7. Being drafted towards the back third of the second round makes a little bit of sense right now. But as we get closer to redraft season, the name Derrick Henry is just going to ring in the ears of a lot of redraft players. And they're going to want to get their hands on a guy that is in an improved offense that loves to run the football. Taking a look at the current ADP, Derrick Henry over Travis Etienne makes a lot of sense to me. Derrick Henry over Kyren Williams, that makes a lot of sense to me as well. And then taking a guy that's going to give you some superior RB1 numbers over a quarterback like Josh Allen, over a Marvin Harrison Jr., over a Devontae Adams, makes a lot of sense. If you're at the back half of the first round and you take a wide receiver with your first pick, I absolutely could see you hitting Derrick Henry on the swing back and taking him in the early second round. Now, we are stacked up again with quite a bit of players here in the third round. And once again, there's only one player that I really feel like is going to be overdrafted here, and that's Nico Collins. And I love Nico Collins, breakout candidate for us last year. We told everybody he was the wide receiver to own in Houston last season. And people, they spent a late round pick on him, or they picked him up off waivers. And because of that, their wide receiver core was balling all year long. but we've added Stephon Diggs. And now there is going to be an issue with consistency within the wide receiver core. Houston's going to have a really good offense, and they're going to put up fantasy numbers. But Nico Collins could be a top 5 wide receiver in week 1, and then he could be going to wide receiver 28 in week 2. Then he could be back up to wide receiver 10, and then he could end up falling completely outside any usable wide receiver position. That's the inconsistency I'm talking about. And since his current ADP has him listed at 30.3 overall, I definitely could see him getting a lot closer to the beginning of the 3rd round, especially for those drafters that go RB to start, and then they want to invest in a high upside guy like Nico Collins. Now, as we get into the heat of redraft season, I could definitely see a guy like Nico Collins going over Brandon Ayuk. There may still be a lot of questions with him if he's still out there demanding trades. Jalen Hurts, a quarterback. I definitely could see people skipping on a quarterback to take more of Nico Collins. Deebo Samuel's going to be up here. He's going to bring some inconsistency questions as well. Great player, great upside, but just like Nico Collins, who's going to get the ball any given week in that offense? Plus, Nico Collins doesn't have the injury concerns that Deebo does. Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Kelce hurt people last year. Drake London, what are we going to be getting? It just feels like people look at Nico Collins in a really good offense and see how good he was last year, and they're not going to be able to pass on him. Heading on into round 4, Joe Mixon and Devontae Smith are the 2 guys that I could see going a lot higher than their current ADP. In fact, with Joe Mixon, I did a video last week taking a look at every single running back that's currently being drafted as an RB2. So anyone that's drafted as the RB13 to RB24, and was trying to figure out which one of those running backs offer you the best RB1 upside. And based on the comment section, a lot of people did vote for Team Monty, but Joe Mixon ran away and was the #1 guy that we talked about being a middle round running back that could offer you RB1 like numbers. And because of that, if we have people out there investing maybe 2 picks at wide receiver in the first 3 rounds, and then another pick at tight end, coming into round 4, Joe Mixon is going to be a guy that people will jump on right away. But also I could see Joe Mixon seeing his ADP increase all the way to the 3rd round, because those players taking wide receivers to start could end up going with Joe Mixon in the 3rd to lock down the running back that they feel like gives them the best chance to be an RB1 that isn't already off the board. I definitely can see an instance where Joe Mixon will see his ADP flip with James Cook, and Mixon will start being drafted over Cook way more often in fantasy leagues. I also could see him going in front of a lot of the wide receivers that are currently listed in front of him as well right now, because nobody really stands out. Stephon Diggs let a lot of people down last year, and again, like with Nico Collins, where's the consistency going to be? Michael Pittman, good wide receiver, but he doesn't really have the ceiling that you may need in this round. DJ Moore, inconsistency questions. Again, lots of weapons in Chicago. DK Metcalf, what are we going to get from him with 2 other good wide receivers? And Geno Smith that was inconsistent at times. Cooper Kupp has had a lot of injury concerns the last couple of years. There's a lot of question marks in front of Joe Mixon. You want to know what Joe Mixon doesn't have? A whole lot of question marks. Devontae Smith also feels like a guy that I could see climbing up draft boards as well. People just are enamored with the upside of Devontae Smith, and he's not a wide receiver 1. Very rarely are we going to want to invest in Devontae Smith being our wide receiver 1, because he's the poster child for putting together big weeks that are going to win your entire week and then turning around and giving you absolutely nothing whatsoever. Now, his ADP and A.J. Brown's ADP definitely have gotten a lot closer this season, but moving forward, Devontae Smith definitely could see people taking a risk on that upside over a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. or DJ Moore, who they feel like may not give them as much upside. You know, when I started this video and even started recording round 4, I didn't have Kenneth Walker listed as a guy that would outperform his ADP. But then I sat here and I looked at it for a second and I thought about some of the comments I've gotten on recent videos. And to me, it actually does feel like Kenneth Walker could end up outperforming his current ADP. People seem to be really intrigued by the potential upside of Kenneth Walker. And now that his ADP has dropped down to RB16, it seems a little bit more worthwhile to invest in him. So people are paying a little bit more attention. With Kenneth Walker last year, it felt like people just wrote him off right away because they didn't want to invest on him where he was currently going. However, this season, because his ADP is a little bit easier to stomach, people are a little bit more interested. They're paying closer attention, and because of that, they're actually studying up on Kenneth Walker a little bit more, and now they like him way more. He could end up going up all the way into the top of the 4th round. Him and Joe Mixon absolutely could jump over James Cook and be taken a lot earlier. The 5th round is going to have a running back and 2 wide receivers that I could see going higher. Alvin Kamara, based on the name alone, definitely could see his ADP get up into the 4th round by the time redraft season starts coming to a close. Then Malik Neighbors. Right now, the video coming out of training camp shows an explosive, game-changing wide receiver, and I think a lot of us knew that in the draft. The only question is Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones can show out in the preseason and training camp and look at least a little bit decent, Malik Neighbors is going to see his ADP start to climb. The only reason nobody's investing in him right now is because of Daniel Jones. So if Daniel Jones just looks competent, people are going to get excited. And then George Pickens. Deontay Johnson is gone. No longer need to worry about a ton of volume going that way. Add that together with George Pickens' upside because of his big playability. We see a guy that could find himself as a wide receiver 1 more times than not this season. And people are going to be excited about that, especially if they can get him as their wide receiver 2 after they've gone running back heavy to start their draft. Round 6 is going to bring us to a couple of running backs on each side of the spectrum, because for David Montgomery, it's all about his efficiency inside an offense that runs the ball and maybe one of the best offenses in all of football. People are going to be investing in David Montgomery, and right now with a 6th round ADP, I definitely can see him getting to inside the 5th round with no issues whatsoever. On the other side of the spectrum, you have Zamir White. Efficiency was not his thing to end last season, but volume was. Will he keep that volume up? Can he get better with efficiency? I think a lot of fantasy players are just looking at Zamir White as a really safe depth piece for their team. And because he's going as the RB24 right now, I feel like people could definitely be investing in him as an RB3 if they're going super heavy on the running backs to start their draft. Now, round 7 is a little bit light on the players, and I know exactly why. And I talk about it in the perfect draft located in our 2024 Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Our draft guide is crammed with information that should realistically cost you way more than $21.99 to get. It's got tons of player profiles. It's got sleepers, breakouts, and busts. We also have exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else, like my dynamic running back rating, or a section of the draft guide that we call the perfect draft, where we go through 10 rounds of all of the draft spots and talk about the players that you can draft in each area that would make you absolutely dominate your leagues with the perfect draft this season. And if you want to get your hands on a digital copy today, all you need to do is head down to the link in the description below after the video is over with and make your purchase of the 2024 Fantasy Headliners Fantasy Football Draft Guide. And the best part about it, because it's electronic, we go through and update it periodically until week 1 of the regular season. In fact, when I get done recording this video, I'm going to be doing another rankings update very soon. Now with round 7, it feels like there's some decent value there, but those guys are being overdrafted right now in a lot of leagues. People are trying to take their shot on them prior to getting that far into the draft, which would make sense why the ADPs are showing that the way they are. Now, for the 7th round, Jake Ferguson is really the guy that I'm looking at. Right now, the tight end 9 off the board, and that's absolutely blowing my mind. He's going to be the number 2 target in Dallas this season. They don't have the run game that they've had in the past, and who knows how many double teams CeeDee Lamb is going to end up seeing this season. For me, Jake Ferguson could absolutely be a huge target monster, and maybe he loses a little bit of upside, but we could see the amount of volume similar to what Evan Ingram did, who saw lots of targets come his way and wasn't always able to break the big plays, but still did exactly what we needed, so we knew that we could put him in our lineup every single week. For round 8, Jaylen Warren going in round 8 is absolutely criminal. This guy has more upside than what Najee Harris does, and maybe Najee Harris has a better floor, but Jaylen Warren going this late in your drafts is being drafted probably as an RB3 at the best. Come on, flexing Jaylen Warren every single week with as good as he is on the field and as crazy as his efficiency was last season, sign me up. People are going to catch on and they're going to start drafting him a lot earlier. On the flip side though, for Rashee Rice, I do think his ADP gets a little bit better. I think people have been hesitant right now because they're worried about some potential issues from the legal side or suspension side that could cause him to miss some time. But Rashee Rice is going to be coming up on a new video of mine very, very soon. So keep an eye out for it. I don't want to give you the title and I don't want to tell you what it is right away, but let's just say Rashee Rice could be a must-have for me. But for the same reason that Rashee Rice is probably being overlooked right now, I think Xavier Worthy could end up flying up draft boards. Xavier Worthy has been dealing with some injuries early in training camp, and that could end up hampering him. But I do feel like there's going to be a lot of fantasy players that get to the 9th round or 8th round, and they're going to be like, I just need some high upside plays right now. Who are some guys to take? And they're going to take Xavier Worthy. He may have more upside than Rashee Rice, and Rashee Rice could end up being safer based on his volume, not if he misses time, but people are going to want the upside a little bit more, and that's going to cause Xavier Worthy to shoot up. Now, later on in the 9th round, we've got Trey Benson. Trey Benson is a guy that I feel like is linked to the potential injury concerns of James Conner. So let's say at any point during training camp, James Conner ends up leaving early, and maybe he has to miss a few days, or maybe they start talking about a hamstring issue, or anything like that. If there is any talk about James Conner potentially missing time, people are going to jump all over Trey Benson. All right, now we're going to head into round 10. And the only guy here out of this small group that I feel like ends up drafting higher than what we see right now is Zeke Elliot. I feel like people are going to talk about him more and more and more, especially when it comes to CeeDee Lamb, because if CeeDee Lamb isn't participating in practice and he's not a guy that's out there full time as he waits a new contract to come his way, people are going to talk about, hey, they're going to have to run the ball this season. Zeke is going to have a ton of volume, and he's not being drafted super high right now, so people don't need to worry about his upside. The only reason they'd be drafting him this late is for his floor to be a nice backup for them on the bench, and a backup on your bench that's getting 15 to 20 carries per week is kind of invaluable. I could see him going into the 9th round easily. Yo, Headliner Nation, there you have it. 10 rounds of ADP broken down, talking about the guys that I feel like could and should be drafted a lot higher than what they are. And that means you're going to have to get to them sooner than what your league mates do. But for now, Headliner Nation, I need y'all to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you are new here. Something like 30% of the people that watch our videos religiously aren't even subscribed to the channel. So check down below and see if that subscribe button has been checked if you've been watching our content for a while now. But Headliner Nation, I'm gonna call it there. Peace out, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.